Hey, how's it going, guys? I'm Chris, and this is Regular Guy Training. You guys are just going to have to excuse the wind because it's out today. But I tell you what, um, as far as our rifle classes are concerned, we do a bunch of iron sight work. If you've taken a class from us already, don't ruin it. Um, but yeah, we do a bunch of iron sight work, and we get people more acclimated to the set of irons that are on their gun. We actually require that you show up with a set of backup irons for our rifle classes because we will get you better acquainted to them. It's not just it's here for appearances so that my friends that train won't judge me kind of a deal. They can be far more useful than they actually are. And those of you that have a set of irons on a rifle already and you're sitting there just kind of waiting on your aim point, you don't have to feel as naked without it. People have been using iron sights since the dawn of warfare as far as rifle fighting is concerned. Okay, so there are a lot of little things that you can do to help yourself out quite a bit. Now, first and foremost, I already posted a video, and I'll leave a link for that in the description below as far as helping you out with keeping your iron sights blacked out. Because a lot of times we sit there and we paddle boat with guns and we do all kinds of stuff with them to the point where, like, eventually you will end up scratching the things up a little bit. Or if you do paint jobs like this and you don't have any masking tape nearby or you just don't want to do it. But right when you shoulder it after that cool ass paint job that you did, you're like, holy crap, these are entirely too light. They don't contrast with anything, and this cool paint job that I did camouflages with the background that I'm shooting into, so these iron sights are kind of sort of useless. So I have a link for that video in the description below, and you can check out how to consistently keep your irons blacked out. So here's the deal. First thing, I'm going to go to the more obvious thing as far as just help for usability. A set of iron sights, particularly on an AR, it's a completely different thing for AKs, but I'm going to stick to the AR right now. But a set of iron sights in the AR, whether it's in a shorter configuration like this or if it's on a 20-inch gun or whatever, there are a lot of really good iron sight setups out there that are backups even that really help boost the flexibility of your own irons. Because let's pick a reason why your optic died or it's jammed full of mud or whatever, right? You can actually rip that thing off and then use your irons pretty effectively, and they're not nearly as slow as a lot of people think that they are. God, that wind is probably screwing up the audio. They're not as useless as a lot of people think that they are, or as slow. So, first thing, if you go to LMT or something like that, you'll spot that their backup rear sight is fixed and there's a little wheel on it like so. Okay, now there are a lot of people that simply don't know what this is for. Now, my Marine Corps dudes know exactly what this is for, and this is to help you with, to simply adjust your rear sight for elevation to help you out with greater distances so that you can simply keep your point of aim the same on the target, like keep it centered up, but it helps your rear sight adjust for those greater distances. Now, right here, you may or may not be able to see a little 8/3. Right now, because these are designed for 300-meter shooting, now granted, keep that into account. So if you have the capability to shoot at 300 meters, that's awesome. Now, this 8-3 here is for like your 36 meter zero. That's essentially like the 50-yard line for a 200-yard line zero. It's a good start. It's not perfect, but it's a good start, and it brings you in fairly close. About one click over, you have a tiny little Z that's underneath that, and you can see that is essentially it boosts you up that tiny little bit to go and confirm at 300 meters, and there you go, right? As you turn it just a little bit more, you have that number 4, and you can see right here there's a little reference line for where exactly that needs to be turned over, so there's no being confused, right? And at the top of the drum, you'll see the number 4, and as you turn it, you're at 5, then you turn it again, you're at 6. Okay, some of them go a little bit higher than that. This one goes out to 7, and then it's at the 8-3 again. So that really does help out for greater distances. But for those of you that have like 50-yard line ranges and stuff like that, where you can only get a 50-yard line zero, this isn't as useful, right? It doesn't really help as much. Well, what if I were to tell you that there's a way to really, really use these things for close-up encounters and stuff like that really, really help out? Now, first thing, a lot of you probably already have a set of backup iron sights that have a daylight aperture and a night aperture, right? Now, for most people, the solve for the closer up stuff is to just use that low light aperture, and that's essentially it. That's good enough, right? What if I were to tell you that you could keep this daylight aperture up and still do really, really well up close without any real problems, and then as you start to back up, you can simply go back to that daylight aperture. Now, here's the thing. A lot of guys are already aware that you have a height over bore issue when it comes to shooting up close and you have like a good 50-yard zero on the gun, right? So, okay, well, that height over bore issue is about here. With a set of standard AR sights, you're looking at something like 2.6 inches over the top of the bore or the barrel. Now, up close, if I hold my sights on something, let's say it's at 3 yards or 5 or 7 or 10, and I put the sights directly in the center of the target, well, I'm going to impact low, right? Because of that height over bore. You're zeroed for line of sight out to 50 yards, so if you're too close, the zero isn't going to help you out. You'll impact lower than your intended point of aim. Now, that doesn't seem like it's all that much, but in the context of self-defense, a lot of us already know to go for the ocular cavity. If it's a brain shot, for instance, to say that you have to take that shot, right? Well, the difference between that really is your point of impact is about in the jaw area, right? And if you amp yourself up with adrenaline and all that stuff, chances are you're probably going to overdrive the rifle just a tad and push down that point of impact just a little bit more. And it's not really your fault. You're jacked up on adrenaline and stuff. So what that really means is that height over bore issue, if you're just holding in the dead center of where that tee box is at, you're going to hit him in the jaw. Now, that'll really ruin his day for the most part. It'll drive his dentist bills higher. But at the same time, if that dude is committed and or drugged up and smacked with adrenaline, he's going to keep coming, right? No ifs, ands, or buts about it. So what most people do, especially with their red dots, is they simply hold higher so that they can hit their intended point of aim. That's great. Now, with a set of AR irons, holding a little bit higher presents a couple of problems. Not in impacting point of aim, but once you start to shoot faster, the rear sight really does become a problem as far as iron sight obscurity. Even if you have the low light aperture in there, you still have the protectors for that iron sight constantly doing like this kind of motion, right? To where if you start shooting kind of fast, it feels like this rear sight is kind of dancing around. And a lot of people, myself included, when I started shooting these things faster, will very easily tell you they'll start to lose the front sight. And once you start to lose the front sight, you're in liability land, right? Because we own every round that we fire, that kind of deal. So what if there is a technique to kind of alleviate that iron sight obscurity? Well, I'm not sure if they teach it anymore. Pretty much anyone that I've asked says no, they've never heard of that before. Even some older guys, right? Like dudes that joined the Army like for an infantry MOS decades ago that didn't hear anything about this. So I always figured this kind of cool. All you really have to do is that instead of holding higher, what you can do is that you can drift the rear sight a little bit lower to the point where the crest of the rear sight is pretty much at the base of the front sight post, and that's your hold. Done, right? A good way to illustrate this is to simply line up the sights like you normally would, right? Now that's your normal lineup, and all you really have to do is cant the gun like so. And that compensates for your hold. The top edge of the rear sight is at the very base of the front sight, pretty much in line with this guy right here, right? Okay, pretty much where your directions are for point of impact up or down, pretty much right there. And that's your hold, okay? And the cool thing about that is that as you're bringing the gun up, you can already achieve that slight cant. You can probably see it in the camera here, that as you bring it up, this is that hold right here. You can see that the gun's canted slightly higher. And this is a traditional lineup. You can see the difference in the two very easily. So as you bring it up, bam, there it is. That's the lineup right there. Versus having to do it like so and then just hold higher. So it's a lot easier to shoot quite a bit faster with even a set of iron sights, right? Now, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that it is as fast or faster to use the irons versus a red dot. But again, for those guys who are saving up for that Aimpoint T2 or whatever, you don't have to be as naked. You can use that as a proper self-defense piece without more or less praying to the bullet hose gods after you send that first round and you start to get iron sight obscurity. Okay, because there are a lot of backup irons out there that don't have a low light aperture, right? So there it is. Well, how far is this effective for before you start shooting too high? Because obviously I'm holding higher than I normally would, about 15 yards. So for 15 and in, you're pretty much on target there, right? Now, as you start to back up further than that, whatever you're zeroed to starts to come back into play as far as your line of sight zero is concerned, and you start to sail, like, it's very dramatic. Post 15 yards, you start to sail them super high, like over the silhouette high. Okay, the difference between 15 and 20 yards is I'm sitting here in the heart, I'm in the heart, and then I'm at the scalp over the top of the target. So be aware of that as you start to back up. But granted, 15 yards is like a hallway in your house. So, you know, and for guys that have like 25 yard long hallways, I need to be your friend, okay? Because you have some money. That's a big house. So there it is. I mean, it's something that can really help for guys that have iron sights, for guys that traditionally really love iron sights and haven't heard this trick before. I've referenced it a few times, and people always ask me, what are you talking about as far as a little iron sight trick there? So there it is. And I've noticed that a lot of people just aren't taught this. So, you know, go out, experiment with it. I will say that the longer the sight radius is, the less centered the rounds actually are. For instance, on this guy right here, it works perfect. If I put the front sight blade, which by the way, you're using the very top edge of the front sight post, just like you normally would, to shoot the target, again, you're just canting it down like so. For a shorter sight radius like so, it works perfect. Pretty much your point of aim, point of impact, you might be like 1/8 of an inch low, something like that. Something that doesn't matter. If you have a 20-inch rifle, for instance, where the iron sights are way out there, it's less effective. You will have to drift that rear sight just a little bit lower so that you can get your hits, and you're pretty much going to have to collect your own dope at that point. Or guys that have that 14.5-inch barreled rifle where their rail stops here, and that's where their front sight blade is pretty much, right? So you're going to have to go out and figure out, okay, where exactly does it hit with the iron sights like that? And it's just a little tidbit of knowledge that helps out. So there you go. Now, if you want to come out and be taught how to use said rifle, even if you have a set of irons and stuff like that, only, or if you want to learn more about your irons, get some more dope like that, and figure out for yourself how much more effective you can be, hey, why not check us out? You know, we have classes all over the place. For this week, at the indoor rifle range at Bud's in Lexington, Kentucky, we have 2 slots left. If you want to last minute sign up, that's fine. I'll leave a link in the description below for all of the available stuff that we have currently. We also have pistol stuff going on in Arkansas in very late March through very early April, like the 31st through the 3rd. And the reason for that gap in the schedule there is I have a kid to be expected in late February. So fuck you guys, I'm going to go handle my family business. But again, there it is. You know, we have a couple of classes available. I'm scheduling more pretty much as we speak. I'm hashing out the details and pushing this out to September. I'm going to wait for the new fiscal year to start with the Army, and then I'm going to go forward with that. So there it is as far as our training schedule. If you want to support us on Patreon, feel free to, or not. I'm not going to think anything less of anybody who doesn't want to donate to us. But for those of you that do donate to people on Patreon, I hope you understand that you're saving a lot of really good channels from going down the tubes. The Adpocalypse, it's varying degrees of negative impact, really, but the Adpocalypse has really negatively affected a lot of channels. A lot of you have already understood that the community guidelines crackdown has already taken down a few channels. So for those of you who help crowdfund those people and let them continue to do what it is that they want to do, and the information that they put out, you're really doing a lot of people a solid. And it's not just gun guy stuff, it's conservative channels in general. Shit, a lot of gaming channels are getting hit because there's video violence on them. It's really fucking ridiculous. So, if you want to donate, that's awesome. We have reward tiers and stuff. We have 2. I used to have 3, but I dropped it down to 2 because I couldn't realistically provide for one of them. So I dropped it down to 2. You can see what that is through the page. I will say the highest one is if you sign up and essentially pay us $35 a month. You can come out and take classes with us, as many as you want, for as long as you're signed up. This system was specifically designed to be abused, because I understand, as a guy that went to a bajillion classes around the country, that this shit really does get ridiculously expensive. So I wish, and I would have killed for any kind of system like that, where you could come out, take everything that's available from somebody and really abuse their system, come out and strut your stuff, test out new gear, and get frustrated by people looking over your shoulder and critiquing little things that you're doing. So, for those of you who want to sign up, don't feel bad about abusing this system at all. There are a couple of people that have taken damn near every class that we have taught since we launched, and even since the testing phase days. So feel free to abuse the shit out of that system. That's what it's specifically there for. The freaks of nature that run out and train and train and train and train. So I'll leave a link to that Patreon page in the description below. And if you want to come out and support the discussion on Facebook with your own insight and stuff like that, that would be great, because there's a lot of really good folks doing a lot of cool things on that page as well. So, with that being said, guys, we hope to see you guys out at classes and stuff. And remember, a regular guy's firearm is the last defense against tyranny. Be easy.